You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Ivana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred. Welcome to a brand new, beautiful day in your life. And it's good to have you here. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, enjoying the sunshine on the island of Kauai with two of my kids anyway, with the boys, and of course my husband Todd as he turned the great big 5-0, so we celebrated an auspicious occasion while we were out on the island. Good morning, Katie Battle. Good morning, Angie. It's great to have you with me this morning. For those of you that are wondering, is the chat room open? It is open. Come on inside and enjoy the water. It's nice and warm in here. I'd like to begin by thanking everybody who follows me here on Spreaker. I really appreciate that. That's a wonderful feeling to know that people are enjoying whatever it is that I present during the course of a month here on Spreaker. So good morning. Today we're going to be talking about vampirism, emotional vampires, related to psychic vampires. What is a vampire? Well, I think that most of us understand what a vampire is in mythology, and I do happen to believe that there are real-life vampires that exist. It is something that is out there in the world. Literally speaking, those that drink the blood, the life force of someone, for whatever reason that happens to be for them. And there are those that drink from the energy of others, like a vampire, that suck the energy right out of us. And we're going to talk about that today. So we know that the chat room is interactive. So please go ahead and interact in the chat room with any questions or thoughts. I'd like to give a shout out to Jess out there in New Hampshire, who's doing a wonderful job of educating youngsters. And it was really great to speak with you last week. Hey, Janet. Good. I'm glad that you're here. Well, actually, I have a confession to make. I had to go get a fresh cup of coffee. So I was a couple of minutes late getting to my own show because the Java just took precedence there for a minute. So thanks for joining me, Janet. Emotional vampires, psychic vampires, energy vampires, who are they? What are they? How do we know that they exist? How do we know that we're not one? Right? I think that we probably all, during the course of our lifetimes, perhaps have been in the role of being needy of other people's energy or other people's energetic support, and maybe without even realizing that we were doing it, draining other people's energy. And we probably have been around energy vampires, emotional vampires, and maybe not even understood that that was what was going on. Or maybe we have emotional vampires in our lives, but there's somebody that we love, and so therefore we feel an obligation to be there for them. Good morning, Nikki Jorgensen, up there at the Heartful Arts Studio. Hey, Carla Jo Worth. So maybe we feel like we need to be around these vampiric people because they've been lifelong friends, or they're family members or co-workers. Maybe it's the boss. And how do we know that we're in the presence of a psychic vampire? Whether it's emotional or mental or spiritual vampire, how do we know? Well, usually when we're around these people, we can feel the drain. It feels as though the life force energy of our body, of our soul, is leaving our energy system, our body itself. We can all of a sudden feel very, very sleepy. We can also feel energy vampires in groups of people. If there's one energy vampire in a group of people that is depleting the energy of the entire group, everyone can become sluggish and tired. And how does that happen? Well, we all know that everything in the universe is made up of energy, that we have an energy body, we have an emotional body, a spiritual body, a psychic body, a mental body. And those bodies are energetic, they are magnetic, they are alive. And some people, we can feel the vibrancy of them when they walk into a room. Oh, that's a great comment. Janet is saying, a friend of mine once told me I was her happy pill. She drains me sometimes. Yes, we all know who the happy pills are, or the ray of sunshine who walks into a room. We can say that somebody lights up a room when he or she walks in, or the room energy shifts when they walk in. All of a sudden, there's a strength of presence when someone walks in to a room. And a lot of people then want that energy. They want some of that. Exactly what Janet is talking about. I want some of that happy. I want some of that strength. I want some of that joy, that friendliness, that curiosity, that spirit of adventure. And sometimes unwittingly, unknowingly, the person in need or in desire of another person's energy begins to draw that energy to them. Just by the mere thinking of, oh, I wish I had whatever it is that she has. What is it that makes her so happy? I would like to have that. And so we say that we bask in their energy. We soak their energy in like a sponge. I like to be around that person so I can soak their energy in. Rather than to just be with the energy, some people feel the need to suck the energy in, to absorb it again like a sponge. And we can be that happy pill 1 minute, and the next minute we feel like a dried up, right, rumpled up, used up sponge. Because all of the energy in our energy body has been sucked out by those who wish to suck in, or, right, to be in our energy. And that is draining. I think that really the onus here is on being in balance. We all love to be around the people that are adventurous and joyful and exciting. So it's something in that energy sometimes we feel that we are lacking. And so we wish to take that on rather than to simply be with it. There's a difference between being with somebody who's joyful and taking that joy into ourselves. That's the trick. That is the lesson. That is how we go about being in balance, both as the joy pill or the happy pill and the person who loves to be around those people. Carla Jo is saying, I worked with a man, when he walked into a room, the lights would dim. Oh, Lord. Okay, so, boy, there we have an extreme condition of sucking in the energy, right? Just like a poltergeist thought or a haunting in a home, drawing in that energy. It's the same sort of thing. Some of us have an energy that others feel that they would like to recharge their battery with or live vicariously through. Sometimes we say they attach to our shirt tails or our coat tails and they ride along with. They ride along that energy, that wave of energy, until the energy dissipates from the person and there's no longer anything to give. Right? And we've all had those people in our lives that ride the tide, that ride the surf along with us until we are completely drained and there's nothing left to give. And then they move on to the next victim or the next source of their energy. And sometimes we can look into our own lives, perhaps, that when have we been that? When have we done that? Maybe in our younger years when we weren't exactly aware of what we were doing at that time. But to be consciously aware that we also have the potential to be the psychic vampire or the emotional vampire. Nikki is saying, I have a few clients like that. And when I know they're coming in, I prepare myself. I zip myself up. Yes, I have a few clients like that as well. When they write to me and say that they want to be put on my docket, I cringe, but I prepare myself in the best way possible for them being in the room with me. And that is actually, preparing myself energetically and spiritually to be in their company so that by the time they leave, I'm not just a puddle on the floor myself. Carla Joe is saying that this person was a black hole of depression. Whenever I stood around him, my arms automatically crossed in front of me, and I stood or sat as far away from him as possible. Yeah, exactly. We who are sensitive can usually feel who the black hole or the energy vampire is. And what it is, really, I feel, is somebody who is trying to fill a void or a hole, a need that is present in their own energy body, their own psyche, in a need to heal a wound that perhaps has not been consciously addressed. The subconscious, the unconscious, will try to fill that void of hurt, of pain, with the light or the energy of positivity from somebody else. And, the hard part in understanding that is until we take a look at our own pain, our own wounding, and we walk into that, we will continue to ask others to bleed for us, right? And sometimes that can result in the ending of relationships, etc., etc. So what is it that drains us? What type of energy is it that drains us? Well, yes, the black hole of depression. The black hole of depression. Good morning, Cousin Corey. I'm so excited I get to go meet my cousin Corey in 2 weeks. I am counting down the days. I literally have like this little calendar thing here in front of me with my flight itinerary. I'm really happy about that. The hardest is when you meet someone who is an energy vampire for the first time and you haven't prepared. Oh my goodness, that's right. They're like a flyby. All of a sudden your energy is gone and it is too late. It is too late. The black hole of depression. Well, the fact of the matter is we all have times in our life where we get down, where we can become depressed. That is a fact of this human journey. And when somebody says that they've never been down in the dumps, they've never been depressed, I always think to myself, wow, either they're in a heavy state of denial, or they lead an exceedingly charmed life, or they have reached a stage of enlightenment that no longer takes them into the depths sometimes of despair in this human journey. I think that we all can say that we've all seen those times in our lives that are sad, that are filled with depression, gloom, and doom. And that's part of the human journey. It's part of having these emotions, of experiencing what it is to be in a human body. The perpetual state of depression, on the other hand, is something that requires, I believe, therapy. It requires help, counseling, to work through whatever it is that's cropping up that causes the pain to be pervasive and ongoing. And, there's nothing wrong. In fact, there's everything right with finding somebody who can help us through those times and to help maintain balance in our lives. So not to negate that there are people who have a propensity or pervasive depression. And so the question is, where do they get their therapy? Do they get their therapy with somebody who's qualified to help them through those times? Or do they get their therapy and their feed, right, of wellness from other people? Maybe they get it from you. I've been around people that are so angry and so depressed, lifelong anger, lifelong depression. And when I've asked the question, why aren't you seeking help? You need counseling, you need therapy for this help. Why aren't you finding it? I don't need counseling. Counseling is for people that are needy. I don't need that. Well, I feel that you do need that. And I think that it would be really good for you to be with somebody who can help you find the source of the anger, to find the source of the depression, and to work through it to bring you into wellness. I'm fine just the way that I am. And if people don't like me, well, then they don't have to be around me. And, in one circumstance in particular, it took me away from somebody, a family member. Because I said, well, that's the truth. That is the way that you are. And if you feel that it doesn't need to be fixed, there's nothing wrong with you. There isn't anything that, the parish priest or a counselor can do for you, and people just need to adjust to you or walk away from you. I'm choosing to walk away until you get help. Until you get help, because I cannot any longer participate in the fact that you've drawn me into your illness of depression and anger. If you would allow me to help you get to help, I'm happy to do that. And I did do that. I gave a wonderful list of people who are counselors, who could help in those situations dealing with childhood anger that has gone on for 6 decades, and to move past that. And when I shared that list of people who came highly recommended, I was told once again there was nothing wrong with them, and I could either walk away or just put up with who they are, because after all, they were old and they just weren't going to change. So I needed to change. I needed to change. I needed to change in that space of saying, I am no longer willing to give my life force energy, to give my joy, my wellness, my balance to somebody who is unwilling to take care of their own issues. Hey, Lady Hawk. Hey, Lady Hawk. Yes, if we haven't refilled our cups as sensitives, yes. We have to protect ourselves, as hard as it is. I remember 4 years ago, Carla Jo, you may remember this. 4 years ago, I was out of state teaching, and I became really, really ill. And I was going through some things with this very person that I'm speaking of this morning. And I became so ill that by the time I got home and got to the doctor, my doctor looked at me, Dr. Steve. He looked at me and he said, I'm really glad that you got here, because frankly, you are on the verge of what we call the toe tag. And we had a really long talk about what it was that I was going through with this particular person. And he looked at me and he said, Denise, how old are you? And at the time I said, well, I'm 52 years old. And he said, I am not kidding you when I tell you that either you leave this relationship with this person and walk away, or I will tell you that by the end of the year, I will be probably placing a toe tag on your foot, because this relationship and this nonsensical drama is killing you. Look at you. Now I'm going to switch up your medications, and we're going to, know that that's going to help you. We're going to switch up the medications, but emotionally and mentally, I, as your doctor, am telling you to walk away from this situation. You walk away, you're a grown woman. You get to choose who family is and who they are not, because it is killing you. And I knew that he was right. I knew that he was right, and it took me to get that sick again, right? Energy vampires are no joke. And oftentimes they can be the people who are closest to us, who will drain our batteries, right? If we're the child in the family who's the hero, if we're the oldest child in the family who's just used to taking care of everybody, negating our own needs, whatever it happens to be, or the friend that will sit and listen for hours and hours, sometimes the way that the energy vampire ends up seeking their own wellness is when we walk away from the energy vampire and say enough is enough. And when my son said to me, Mom, you've walked away from this relationship and I know there's no going back. Why is that? And I said, son, I have to make a choice between my life or theirs. As empaths, sensitives, and spiritual people, sometimes we give our life away to others, because that's just a fact of the matter of who we are. We are givers. And sometimes we can give until we do give our life away, or until we're on the precipice of giving our life away, our joy away. And all the while, checking in on ourselves, are we becoming that person? And it's not to say that sometimes we do need an ear Sometimes we do need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes we do need, in that moment, somebody or someone or something to help us through the dark night. But when the dark night becomes our story, and we begin to glean the light from those around us, including our pets, because our animals want nothing more than for us to be joyful and happy and well. Sometimes we have to self-check. Maybe it is time for me to seek help outside of my friends and family. There's a reason nobody's coming to visit me anymore, right? Yeah. The energy vampire, the psychic vampire, is oftentimes the chronic complainer. And yes, they can exist on social media. They're the person that puts, every morning or every afternoon or evening, whenever it is that you check your social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're the person who perpetually puts the angry meme, the depressing meme, right? And every once in a while, we all put something on there. Maybe that's a little shocking. It shows a little anger or irreverence. But then there are those people that the outlet for their depression, the outlet for their anger, their outlet for their unresolved, whatever it happens to be, is social media. And sometimes we feel that because it's social, we need to continue to follow that person's memes or like that person's memes, when it's the same thing over and again. And we wonder why social media then can drain us. In this new world of being connected 24/7 by social media, we have to understand that spiritual vampires, emotional vampires, psychic vampires, all of it also exists there. And in the energy of reading one more angry, snippy, snitty meme, or one more depressive meme, it sucks us into that energy, especially if we are sensitive or empathic. And that's not to say that everything on social media needs to be glitzy and glamorous and all of that kind of a thing. But you know what I'm talking about. And we have a choice. Whether to continue to read those things. Every once in a while somebody will put something up about animal abuse, and it does exist out there. And, I look at that and I give prayer, or sometimes, whatever it is being asked for, a donation or whatever to help with a circumstance. But I have had friends on social media that the entirety of their thread were photos of abused animals. Now, as for me, looking at abused anything, whether it's an animal or a child or an elder, I can't do that. And I understand that. And I have left groups that were dedicated to these sorts of things. And I've been asked, why have you left this group? And I will give an honest answer: because it drains my energy. It drains my energy to see the same thing over and again. And I have to protect my energy. I have to know what drains my heart, what drains my soul. So social media is one of those easy things where you can unfollow or unfriend or block a group or whatever you need to do, because you need to do that. It does, our energy, our heart and soul energy leaches out. And we wonder, well, where did it go? I used to find a lot of joy on social media. I used to enjoy looking at all the photos on Instagram. Now all of a sudden it's full of anger. It's full of woe. It's full of gross obscenity. Whatever gross obscenity means to your soul, to your heart. And so we have easy choices to make when it comes to that. And I think the older that we get, it becomes easier to disassociate with those things that hurt our heart, that hurt our energy. But what about the people in our lives in the office? Or the people in our lives who are our clients or family and friends? Sometimes friendships go the way of right? Just no different than the family relationship I was talking about earlier. Sometimes it really does come down to saving our own mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health by leaving those people who are unwilling to do the work for themselves, but they're very willing to take the good energy, the good love, the kindness from others, rather than to do their own work. And sometimes, when we're dealing with an energy vampire, we have to be brave enough to say, you're sucking all the energy out of my life, and I can't do it any longer, and perhaps you need help, and if I can help you get to that help, I'm happy to do so. I'm happy to do so. Corey says, I hide the posts. Me too. Yes, unfollow, hide, or block. We don't have to put up with that nonsense on social media just because it's social. And Janet saying, oh no, the chronic complainer. Oh my goodness, yes, the chronic complainer. Complain, complain, complain. And oftentimes what we notice about the psychic vampire or the emotional vampire is that they are passive aggressive. So what they would rather put on Facebook is something that they're hoping that they feel their transgressor is going to get, rather than say to the person face to face or in a private message something. They will put a very passive aggressive post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, right? Rather than to say to the person, I am offended by, I am hurt by, I wish you would get help for. That passive-aggressive sometimes is the worst form of emotional vampirism. As a quadruple Scorpio, I've been accused of being a little bit too blunt sometimes with those things. I'm a very patient person, and then I reach my end. And I'm happy to help people get help, but I am not happy to lend energy when the perpetual complainer is that because it fills a need. Oftentimes the psychic vampire or the emotional vampire finds that their need is filled, whatever that need happens to be, and they will find participants who are willing to give in order to fill that need. And we can decide whether or not we are willing to fill that hole. Some people, some situations are an empty black hole. And there is no amount of backfill that you can do to fill the hole. And I've known people, beautiful people, that have nearly given everything they have to give to fill the hole, the void within a family member, a friend, a coworker, a student, a client. Well, if I give just a little bit more, I'm pretty sure that pothole that's in their life will be filled. And yet the pothole is never filled. I've seen couples, right, in some marriages or partnerships, sometimes one or the other is the perpetual black hole. And I've seen men and women nearly give their lives. I've seen a lot of people give their joy to relationships where they're continually filling the black hole that can never be filled without healing, without counseling, without therapy, without inner work, without doing the work. Let me have a look. The keyboard warrior. And Janet is saying, The Office, it only takes one or two negative people to drag down a whole team. Absolutely. It can only take one person at a dinner table, right? A great big beautiful family or friend dinner. One person, I call them the Eeyore. Woe is me, right? They live in camp, woe is me. And they bring camp, woe is me. You also don't have to invite those people to social gatherings, by the way. The joy killers. Right? You don't have to do that. Nikki is saying, do you find that your guides or psyche will prepare you for those that do suck the energy from you? I typically dream of someone a day or two before I run into them. Yeah, sometimes we are prepared in our dream time. The emotional vampire. The emotional vampire that's out there, that we hope we don't run into them. Oh my goodness, please don't let me run into them in the grocery, because every time I run into them in the grocery, I'm drained. Sometimes our own interior guidance will give us a hint. Don't go there today because they're going to be there. You know the people I'm talking about, the ones that you see and you quick go to the next aisle in the grocery. That's a key that those people are probably a vampire in your life. There's something about their energy and meeting up with them that you really wish to avoid, so you will run screaming to the other end of the grocery store or the hardware store or wherever you happen to be to avoid them. To avoid them, yes. Another one of those people are the people that do not stop talking. They can't stop talking. And usually what they're talking about is themselves. I love Judith Orloff's work. I was reading some of this in the last couple of weeks to get ready for today's show. The perpetual talker. And they talk, and pretty soon you're mesmerized by the cadence of their voice. You're not even listening to what it is that they're saying, because all they're doing is talking. All they're doing is talking, and usually all they're doing is avoiding a deeper subject, avoiding what's really in their heart and mind, or they're talking perpetually about their own stuff, right? They're dumping all of their whatever they need to dump on your front stoop, hoping that you'll help to launder it. They're perpetually talking and unloading their nervousness. And it's draining. And it's draining. Because they don't know how to be in the quiet. Some of my favorite friendships are the ones where you don't say a thing, right? You can drive around, you can sit around, and you don't say a thing. Nothing needs to be said. They have no art of conversation unless it revolves around them. You know the one I'm talking about at a dinner party or a social event? I will avoid those people like the plague. And once they've bored one or two people that are listening to them, they'll move on to the next few people that are done listening to them. You can walk away from them and excuse yourself, by the way. Sometimes we feel as though we need to be polite. Janet's saying, I'm smiling. I keep picturing people you're describing. And again, sometimes we have to look at ourselves and say, oh my goodness, am I being that person? And if we keep ourselves in check, then we can say, I need to just be quiet for a minute and just be. Checking ourselves for that. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't have times where we have so much excitement in something, so much we want to tell, so much that we want to share in any given moment. Really, the bottom line of today's show is that energy vampires are the people, you already know who they are. They're in your family, they're in your circle of friends, they're in your workplace. And sometimes because they're in those circles, we feel this obligation to allow them to be there and an obligation to participate in their vampirism as the person giving, not receiving, giving. And giving and giving. And we can give. It's our choice to give. It's great to be there for our friends and our family and our co-workers when they are in a time of need. I believe in that, being there for people. But there's a difference between being there for people who are processing and doing their work and giving people our life, our love, our heart, to protect us from that vampiric energy. Well, I tell you, when I go to a shopping mall, which is very rare, I am not a shopper, I always make sure that I ask for protection from the vampires that lurk in shopping malls. If I am going to an event, I ask my ancestors to be present. The woe is me, the perpetual anger, there's never enough, the black hole, feed me, feed me. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, some people will never be fed enough, and it is not your job to continue feeding them. Perhaps the best we can do, again, is to recommend places where they can go to heal their soul or to find a place of respite for that healing that's clearly come up and is begging for attention. Begging for attention. Angie is saying, I have to remind Bruce quite often, it is okay not to be there for everyone all the time. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, your Bruce is quite a giver. Give, give, give. Some of us were raised in connections. Somewhere along the line, we decide that our joy, our time, our love is more precious than that. But if we're going to continue to dive deep, wanting to fix and mother and father everybody that we know, that is our choice to do that as well. That is our choice to do that as well. Everything in moderation. Everything in balance, I say. And there's Gabriel. Right? Everything in moderation, everything in balance. And when relationship is out of balance, we have to take a look at our participation or our lack of participation, where we are in the relationship, what we've contributed to it, what we've taken from it, right? Sometimes what we've taken is a beating, and we get to decide if we're ever going to be emotionally battered or physically battered or spiritually and mentally battered ever again. I had a great conversation with a friend of mine yesterday that I hadn't seen in years, and she was in from Massachusetts, and we were visiting, and she's now in her 60s, and we were talking about the fact that, sometime in our lives, we come to a place when we decide we are no longer going to be battered men or women. We're not going to be that anymore. And we get to choose. And the beauty of excising ourselves from the vampires in our lives is that, believe it or not, doing our own work, coming into our own wholeness and wellness, means that we are gifting that also to those that we love. Right? So I'll just use an example here. If I'm doing my interior work, if my cousin Corey is doing her interior work, Corey and I share the same blood and the same bones. Right? My blood is her blood, her bones are my bones. If she's doing her work, if she's standing up as a strong woman, her work is affecting me in beautiful ways. If I'm doing my mental, emotional, spiritual work, hopefully it's affecting her in good and positive ways. And in both of us doing our work and being strong, kind, loving women, our children and our grandchildren are affected by that in good and positive ways. And at first, it can feel foreign to our friends when we say to our friends, you know what, I'm really not wanting to participate in that anymore. Or our favorite coworker, I really don't want to participate in the office gossip anymore. That can be an offense to some. And that's okay, they can be offended. But what's more important is we're no longer allowing ourselves to be offended. We're no longer allowing our hearts to be offended, our minds, our bodies to be offended. And in doing so, there's a ripple effect. That's, hey, Janet isn't participating in the gossip around the cooler anymore. And I really think a lot of Janet. Maybe I should take her lead. Hey, I noticed that Bruce isn't fixing everything for everybody anymore. I really love Bruce. He's a great guy. Maybe I need to take his lead and follow that example, right? In avoiding the vampire or offering help to the vampire, right? First offering help, perhaps, and then avoiding or cutting ourselves away completely. We're strengthening our own energy body. And for some people, when they see us strong for the very first time, they don't know what to do with that. When they see that we're no longer going to come to their camp, woe is me. We're not going to sit on the pity pot with them, right? My sister Barbara is a classic example of that. She'll call me, and sometimes the first words out of her mouth is, "Oh, sister, I am on the pity pot today." And I might say, well, is it a one-holer or a two-holer? Do you need me to scooch right up there next to you, Barbara? Do we need to have a chat? Well, yeah, come on in, she'll say. And then after she tells me her story, she'll say, okay, well, I feel better. Thank you for listening to me while I was on my pity pot. I feel better. And sometimes I participate in that by giving advice if it's asked for. Other times I just sit next to her on the two-holer and, I listen to her. And, she's 74 years old now, so she'll say to me, it just felt good to be able to tell somebody. I feel better now. You want to know something funny that happened on the reservation last week? That's not psychic vampirism. That's being there for my sister, who in a time of need needed somebody. She recognizes I'm on my pity pot, and she'll say I'm on my pity pot, so it's not a daily thing. It's not, right? She doesn't write about it then on Facebook for the next year. It's over, it's done with, it's talked about, it's helping her process. It's helping her process. That is different. That's different. By stepping away from that, we become stronger for ourselves. We become stronger for those like Barbara who say, hey, I'm on my pity pot right now. I need help. I need help. It's different. What do you think of this, Dee? Can I run something by you, right? If Kelly Spencer calls me and says, I'm overwhelmed, do you have some time to talk? Absolutely, let's talk. And she might say to me, Dee, I feel a whole lot better now. I just needed to bounce that off of somebody. Well, good, because there are times when I need to bounce something off of somebody. And I would hope, those of you that see me more than others, Carla Jo, Nikki, you might say, you're kind of stuck to that pity pot there, Dana. You're going to have a ring around your hind end if you don't get off of it pretty soon. My daughter's really good at that for me, though. Daughters are great at that. Geez, Mom, isn't it time for you to get over that? Well, yeah, now that you say that, it is time to move along. Daughters are great gauges of, right, that kind of a thing, especially if you have one like Elise. Little Spitfire. Yep, time to move along. Got a ring around my hind end from sitting on that pity pot too long. Right? I've let my own anger absorb too much of my good energy. I'm done with that, and I'm done with the source of the anger. I'm over that. Got to get through it. Or if I'm not and I know I need to go deeper, well, then maybe I'm dialing up somebody who's a professional who can help me work through that. Or maybe I'm calling for somebody else. Hey, Nicole Fix, do you know a therapist who specializes in adoptees? Hey, Terry Ruel, do you know anybody out there that helps adoptees? Right? Doing the work, working through the work. It's good. But when somebody else's work becomes our drain, when somebody else's work becomes our work to the detriment of our own mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health, then we need to take another look. And yes, sometimes you just need a hug. Sometimes you just need a hug. Sometimes you just need to know that, hey, if I needed it, I could say to Janet Smith, Janet, could we Skype? I know you're 6 hours ahead of me over there in the UK, but could we Skype? I need to talk to somebody. Or if I text Corey and I say, hey, cousin, you got time this week to chat? She'll say, yeah, what's your week look like? Doesn't have to be instantaneous. Right? What about those vampires that expect you to be there in the next 5 minutes? Well, life really doesn't work that way, oftentimes. Sometimes we can drop everything and anything. Other times we can't. Other times we can't. And that's okay. So allowing others space when we ask for help. Sometimes they can be there lickety-split, and other times they have a life of their own. And so they are there for us, but maybe not in that moment. And maybe those precious moments in between gives us a little more time to think about or pray about or be with. You know, as Barbara or Dell often say to me, just pray about that, be with that. Be with that for a little longer. Think about that. Take out your pipe, take out your chanupa and pray about that for a little bit. Yeah. Vampires, they exist. They're everywhere. Checking ourselves to make sure that we're not it, right? Or if we catch ourselves in the moment of being a vampire, checking ourselves and saying, whoa, wait a minute here. I've become that. Right? Reaching out for help when we need help. Reaching out for help when we need help. And if somebody suggests kindly and lovingly that maybe we do, at least taking it in for consideration. Taking it in for consideration. Maybe there's another way. Maybe when we discover that all of the angry Facebook memes that we put out there really aren't helping the situation, or the pitiful memes, or the passive-aggressive memes that we put out there really aren't helping the situation. Maybe that will bring us then to a place of saying, maybe rather than waiting for cyberspace to help me with what I'm feeling, I need to actually connect with a human being who can help me. And maybe finally having the courage to say, I'm not going to read that thread anymore. I'm going to leave that group that frankly depresses me. That's okay. Saying no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. As is yes is a complete sentence. Everything in moderation, everything in balance. And when you are, sometimes we have no choice but to be with those people who suck the energy from us, Thanksgiving dinner, whatever it happens to be. We can remove ourselves from the room. We can excuse ourselves from the party early. We don't have to stand there and talk to them. We don't need to be around them. We can remove ourselves from the situation as best we can. And when we get home, we can smudge ourselves. Boy, I'll tell you what, I smudge this house. If I've got, crabby pants or cranky pants or whatever in my house, I smudge this house, a little frankincense and myrrh incense. Sometimes it's sage and cedar. And always, I love my clients. I love my work. Most of my work is grief counseling. It's grief counseling. So I'm part of the process for a lot of courageous people who get a hold of me and say, Dee, I need to work through this grief. Can you help me? Well, yes, let's talk. And I'm honored to participate in somebody's healing path. And when they leave and we've talked about their grief and their grief has been cried out or shouted out, right? Or in the silence, it's made itself present. I clear the room. A little bit of frankincense and myrrh, some of Meg Anutto's sacred oils in the room. I'm honored to help people in the process of becoming. I'm honored to help people who are in the process of grief and mourning, whatever the grief and mourning is attached to. Sometimes it's attached to divorce, mourning the loss of a marriage, mourning the loss of a loved one, mourning the loss of physical health. Participating in that is sacred, sacred work, and I honor that. And I'm realistic about it, making sure that my own energy, some people will say to me, isn't this energy of working with grieving people, doesn't that drain you? Yes, it does. And it's also my work. And I think a lot of us come home from the office tired. That's part of human life. When we interact with people, sometimes it just is draining because we love them, we care about them. We want them to be happy, to be nourished, to be nurtured. Sometimes they test us. Sometimes they can challenge our balance. They can rattle our cages. And sometimes learning to think something new can be draining, right? I've been told that I challenge balance, that I rattle cages, that I help push people out of their comfort zone. That's sacred work. That's sacred work. Recognizing who it is that takes our energy for their own use. Some people come into our lives for that purpose alone. For that purpose alone. We need to be watchful of those people. Some people love to be in our presence and it's reciprocal. Some people just have a hard time throughout their lives and we can be there for them. It's the people who are in our lives and are in our lives for the purpose of perpetually draining our goodness, our love, that we need to be watchful and mindful and consciously aware of, as we need to be aware of our own motivations at all times. Carla Joe. Comfort zone push. Yep, that's why I am teaching. Yeah, sometimes I push people out of their comfort zone. From where I am, I see the beauty of their perhaps untapped potential, or the potential and their awareness of who they are, but their reticence in sharing it. Their hesitation in sharing it. Because we also have people in our lives that are the Debbie Downers that say, well, the Debbie Downer can find the downfall in everything, right? And we have the pessimist that says, what do you mean you're going to teach a class? Really, who are you that you think you can do that? They may not say it, but they may be thinking it, and you can feel that. Who are you to be able to be successful like that? Who are you to think that you can do that? Well, if you do that, there are going to be problems that come along with it. What are you going to do if you're successful at it? You need to look at that too. We can walk away from that. We may consider what it is that they're offering by way of their pseudo-advice, their passive-aggressive advice. We can take that into consideration. Yeah, who am I going to be? What is that going to look like? We can walk away from that. We can say no, we can say yes. It's our choice. It's our choice always. I like to encourage people, and I like to encourage people to be self-empowered. Yeah, people whose cup is always half empty. It's the Eeyore. And I love Winnie the Pooh, and I love all of that. And Eeyore offers us a glimpse into people who are the black hole, who are never full, who can never be full. There is not enough that we can feed them. And in our own death, they continue to move on. in the death of a friendship or a relationship, they continue to move on to the next feeding ground. Right? They can leave us angry, resentful, dried up, self-doubting, drained of our energy. And why? Why would we allow that? We came here to shine our light. Not half of our light, not the dim version of our light, but the fullness of our light. We did not give it away, come here to give it away to people who are not willing to cultivate their own light, their own wellness, or to give it away to people who are perpetually enjoying the darkness of their circumstance because it gives them something, it feeds something within them, to have others do their work. We came here to do our work, to hone our own light, to polish our own mirror, and in doing so, offering that to the world, just by being who we are. Just by being who we are every day of every moment. And polishing that mirror, honing that light, is not for the faint of heart. So why would we give it away so easily? Why would we give it away so easily? With that, everybody, we are at the top of the hour, and I love you too, Corey. I cannot wait to get myself down there to Florida at the end of the month. Cannot wait. With that, everybody, get out there and shine your light, love your light.